Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Demian Johnson, and you're listening to MMALatestNews.com.
It's time to roll, baby.
And welcome back to MMA Latest News. My name is James Sweenham, and this week we have an absolutely terrific show for you all to watch. We will be discussing the rumours surrounding Corey Anderson versus Johnny Walker. Tyron Woodley takes a little trip to Canada to train with GSP. Could Ben Askren be on the cusp of a big fight against Demian Maia? In Singapore, Chris Cyborg has officially cut ties with the UFC, and tensions are hotting up between Kamaru Usman and Colby Covington. Feel free to drop all comments in the little section below, and I'll get around to them at the end. Now, first things first, Corey Anderson versus Walker. MMA Fighting have confirmed with sources that a bout between the light heavyweight contenders is virtually set for UFC 244 at Madison Square Garden. And it's certainly an interesting contest. I think the winner is most likely to go on to get a shot at Jon Jones. I imagine the UFC will be in the Walker camp. He's somewhat exciting, isn't he? I think in terms of people who could potentially challenge Jon Jones for his world title, I think Johnny Walker would be the one. He's virtually cleaned out that light heavyweight division, but he doesn't seem to have any concrete plans to go up to heavyweight to challenge himself against the likes of Stipe Miocic or Francis Ngannou. So I think the Walker clash is the one that's got a bit of venom in it, the one that's going to get people going. I think that's most likely what's next, but Corey Anderson could very well win that as well. He's a good wrestler, isn't he? But since that knockout to Jimmy Manuwa, he's come on leaps and bounds, but I don't think he's quite good enough to challenge Jon Jones. I imagine Johnny Walker will continue the run that he's on at the moment. I think he's most likely to get the victory there and will go on to potentially challenge Jon Jones on that New Year's card, which always gets fans going, doesn't it? Moving on, we have Tyron Woodley. He's going out to train with GSP in Canada, and it's an interesting move from Tyron Woodley, isn't it? I think now that GSP is retired, there's no real rivalry there. Of course, those two both class themselves as the greatest welterweight of all time at one point or another. But with Tyron Woodley obviously losing to Kamaru Usman in devastating fashion, he's going to get to work on his grappling again. GSP is one of the best about, and it was a real shock to Woodley when Usman dominated him in the fashion that he did. So I think it can only be a good thing for Tyron Woodley to be training with GSP, who by all accounts is looking just as good as he did when he came back and beat Michael Bisping. So a return for the Canadian isn't guaranteed, but it could well be a possibility. So iron sharpens iron, as they say in the trade. So I think Tyron Woodley will be getting better and better. Of course, his fight with Robbie Lawler was recently cancelled. Colby Covington swung in there and picked up the victory, but he'll be looking to get back in the octagon before too long to make his way back to a world title shot. Because let's be honest, he's a bit of a forgotten man in that welterweight division. The likes of Colby Covington and Jorge Masvidal and Leon Edwards have stolen all the attention away from him. And it wasn't long ago people were calling him one of the greatest welterweights to have ever lived. So he'll be desperate to prove why he held onto the belt for so long and get back in the cage as soon as possible. Next up, we are talking all about Ben Askren and Demian Maia, which may well be headlining UFC Singapore on October 26th. Ben Askren revealed all the details to Ariel Helwani on his MMA show on ESPN. And I think it makes sense for both men. Demian Maia obviously coming off a win. He struggled recently against the likes of Kamaru Usman, but he's still a talent in that welterweight division. As for Ben Askren, of course, that loss was absolutely horrific, wasn't it? Jorge Masvidal lit him up like a Christmas tree. It was one of the worst defeats I've ever seen. A 5-second knockout, breaking the record for the quickest knockout inside the octagon. But if we're going to be honest, that knockout came 2 seconds into the bout, didn't it? If we're going to go from when the knee actually landed. I think Ben, he went 19-0, such a terrific record. For it all to crumble down so quickly, it says a lot about his character that he's willing to get straight back in the octagon. A lot of people who lose take a bit of time out. They can't really cope with it mentally. I think Ben Askren's a very strong person. He's had heartbreak before, hasn't he, at the Olympics when he didn't win the gold that he was desperate to win. So I think as soon as he gets back in that octagon, he'll be back to winning ways. I make him a clear favourite against Demian Maia. Obviously, what Rafael Dos Anjos, Colby Covington, what they did to Demian Maia, I think Ben Askren can replicate that with his wrestling skills. So make him the clear favourite then. And who knows, he could well be in world contention again himself. It was only one loss. That doesn't define your career. Colby Covington and Kamaru Usman, I think stylistically they're decent matchups for Ben Askren. All wrestlers, and I think he can compete with the best wrestlers in the world, I really do. Anyway, moving up, what have we got next? Chris Cyborg. Per MMA Fighting, Dana White has announced that he is officially out of the Cyborg business. And I don't think that comes as too much of a shock. I know that we were talking all about this potential rematch between Cyborg and Nunes, but let's be honest, it hasn't been a very good relationship between Dana White and Cyborg ever, really. Dana obviously what's referred to as looking like Vanderlei Silva in a dress and heels, which of course caused some tension between the pair. But overall, I think that Cyborg, I think it's right for her to leave the UFC now. She hasn't really entertained like we thought she might. She had all this hype behind her after her reigns in Invicta and Strikeforce, but it all came crashing down, didn't it, really, when she came to the UFC. She beat Konetskaya, she beat Holly Holm, she beat Tonya Evinger, but in none of those performances, she didn't really set the world alight. She didn't get people talking that much. So when she took on Amanda Nunes, it felt like maybe her time to finally come out into the limelight to prove why that she was one of the best women of all time. And it didn't go her way. Amanda Nunes blasted her out in 48 seconds. And judging by that performance she put in against Felicia Spencer, I don't think a rematch would go any differently. I think Amanda Nunes is definitely the greatest woman of all time. I don't think Cyborg can beat her unless she lands a lucky punch. So Cyborg has to consider options outside the octagon. And I think the most likely option would probably be Bellator. I think they'd be all over getting Cyborg to fight for them. And I think she'd probably become champion over there. So as for Dana White and Cyborg, the split's been relatively amicable in some ways. Obviously, Cyborg released a video where Dana White was meant to have come out with some controversial comments. I think she admitted that some of her editors did some clever work there to make it look like Dana had potentially said things that he hadn't. She apologised for that. Dana White accepted. They can both move on, go their separate ways, and we all look forward to seeing Cyborg in a cage in the not-too-distant future. Anyway, lastly, we've got Colby Covington and Kamaru Usman. It's looking like this one's going to go down at Madison Square Garden. I think everybody's doesn't entirely know which way this contest is going to go, because they do things basically exactly the same way. They've both got incredible wrestling, haven't they? They've both got freak fitness, but neither of them are the greatest strikers. So who wins this one? I'm going to edge slightly towards Kamaru Usman. I know there can be some recency bias. Colby Covington looked absolutely terrific against Robbie Lawler. But I think Kamaru has raised his level that tad bit higher against Tyron Woodley. I don't think anybody expected Kamaru to go out there and dominate Woodley in the fashion that he did. It was mightily impressive, wasn't it? So I'm going to edge slightly towards Usman. But I think what's going to get people talking the most is the build-up towards this one. Obviously, Colby Covington is probably now the most controversial star in the UFC. He wears his Wear America Great Again hat. He loves it, doesn't he? He loves to get people talking. He made that disgusting comment against Matt Hughes, which some found distasteful, but from his perspective, he's trying to play that villain. He wants to be that bad guy. He wants people to hate him, and he ultimately wants people to tune in to see him lose, because that's how he's going to put money on the table and bread in his family's home. So Kamaru's sort of falling for the bait. We saw on ESPN the two pair of them kick off, and it wasn't the greatest trash talk I've ever seen. They're not Conor McGregor, they're not Michael Bisping, but as long as they go at it, grudge matches sell, and I think this one will sell. Obviously, Usman being an immigrant, there's that sort of Donald Trump tie into it, so this will be an interesting concept between the pair, and I think that this one can really sell. I think it might get casual fans chatting. Covington, Usman, I think the whole of the world will be watching that, hoping that Usman can find a way to beat Colby Covington, and it's definitely going to be hard work. But I think he can do it. I think Kamaru Usman will go on to reign supreme in this welterweight division for quite a long time to come, because I don't believe Jorge Masvidal can beat him. And I know Jorge Masvidal put on such a scintillating performance against Ben Askren and Darren Till, with two of the best knockouts we've seen in UFC history. But I think when he steps up to the level where somebody can do everything, I think he's going to struggle. Leon Edwards, of course, he'll be gunning for a rematch with Kamaru Usman. He lost the first time round, and I think Leon's improved massively. He's been so good as of late. He put on clinics against Cowboy Cerrone, Gunnar Nelson, and Rafael dos Anjos, and he showed that he's got decent grappling himself. I mean, he took Rafael dos Anjos down, which was risky considering Rafael dos Anjos is so good on the ground, and he bullied Gunnar Nelson. So I think Leon's a threat, but once again, Kamaru has to go in a marginal favourite. And then, of course, there's Ben Askren, who although he got beat in such bad fashion. I do think Ben Askren can challenge Kamaru Usman. I think that's certainly an interesting prospect. And of course, Ben Askren, of course, famously branded him Marty from Nebraska. So there is that rivalry there. So I think it's an interesting one. Let's have a quick look at the comments. Nice to see some new faces on the channel. Really appreciate that. Thank you for all the support. Anyway, that's all the time we have today. Make sure you like, subscribe, click the notification bell and follow us on social media. Links will be in the description below, and we'll be back next week for all your latest news.